I never thought I'd be standing in a stranger's kitchen on a rainy Tuesday, debating whether IKEA furniture was worth the assembly headache while she casually asked me to be part of her life story. If someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd be helping a 50-year-old woman I barely knew move into her new apartment and contemplating becoming more than just her neighbor, I would have laughed so hard I might have sprained something. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Yet here I was, holding an Allen wrench like it was some magical key to my future, while Diane looked at me with those expectant hazel eyes. "So," she prompted, leaning against the half-assembled bookshelf. "What do you think, Thomas? Would you be part of my story?" The rain tapped against the windows of her new apartment, creating a soundtrack to this surreal moment. Divorced for 3 years, and had sworn off anything resembling emotional entanglement. My job as the building superintendent had been the perfect excuse to keep people at arm's length, fix their leaky faucets. Sure, join their personal journey of self-discovery. Not in the job description. I set down the wrench and cleared my throat. "Diane, I barely know you. I'm just helping you move in because it's my job." She smiled, the kind of smile that suggested she knew something I didn't. "Is it really your job to spend 4 hours helping a new tenant arrange furniture and debate the merits of minimalism versus cozy clutter?" She had me there. "Look," I continued, trying to sound reasonable, "I'm just not sure what you're asking for here." Diane tucked a strand of silver-streaked auburn hair behind her ear. At 50, she had the kind of confidence that comes from weathering life's storms and emerging stronger. "I'm not proposing marriage, Thomas. I'm just saying I'm starting over. New city, new job, new life, and I'd like to get to know you better. That's all." That wasn't all, and we both knew it. There was something electric between us. Something that had sparked the moment she walked into the building 3 days ago, rolling suitcase in tow, looking lost and found at the same time. "My name is Thomas Reed. I'm 46, divorced, and for the past 5 years, I've been the superintendent of the Westbrook Apartments in Portland. It's not the career I imagined when I was younger. But after my architecture firm downsized and my marriage imploded in the same month, it offered stability. I fixed things: leaky pipes, broken garbage disposals, faulty wiring. People, on the other hand, are beyond my skill set. So I thought, until Diane Crawford moved into apartment 3B. She arrived on a Sunday, the kind of crisp autumn day that makes Portland feel magical. I was fixing a loose railing on the second floor when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. "Excuse me, are you the super?" Her voice was warm with a slight southern lilt. I turned to find a woman about my age, with auburn hair streaked, with silver and laugh lines around her eyes. She wore jeans, a green sweater, and an expression that was equal parts determined and terrified. "That's me, Thomas Reed." I wiped my hand on my jeans before offering it. "You must be the new tenant in 3B, Diane Crawford," she said, shaking my hand with a surprisingly firm grip. "I just drove in from Nashville. 18 hours straight. I might be hallucinating this entire conversation." I laughed despite myself. "That's quite a drive." "Moving truck coming later?" A shadow passed over her face. "No moving truck. Just me and what fits in my SUV. Fresh start." There was a story there, but it wasn't my place to ask. "Oh, welcome to Westbrook. If you need anything fixed, I'm in apartment 1A. "Actually," she said, "I could use some help getting my mattress up to the 3rd floor. It's currently strapped to the roof of my car, and I'm realizing I might have overestimated my abilities." That was how it started. Me, helping Diane Crawford wrestle a queen-sized mattress up 3 flights of stairs. Both of us laughing and cursing in equal measure. By the time we got it into her empty apartment, I'd learned she was a high school English teacher starting a new job, she had a daughter in college, and she made terrible puns when she was nervous. "Well," she said, looking around the bare apartment, "home sweet home, or it will be, once I figure out how to adult again. She waved her hand dismissively. "Long story involving an ex-husband, a midlife crisis his, not mine end. The realization that I've spent the last 25 years living someone else's life." I nodded, not knowing what to say. My own divorce had been clean but painful, no children. Just the slow realization that we'd grown in different directions until we were practically strangers sharing a mortgage. Anyway, Diane continued, "Thanks for the help. Owe you a coffee." Or something. "Just doing my job," I said, heading for the door. "Thomas." Her voice stopped me. "Is there a good place nearby to get furniture? Preferably somewhere that delivers, because I don't think my back can take another round of mattress wrestling." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I found myself smiling. There's an IKEA about 20 minutes away. They deliver. But their assembly instructions might make you question your sanity. At this point, sanity is overrated, she quipped. "Thanks again. I thought that would be it. It's just another tenant interaction, professional and forgettable." But the next day, I ran into Diane in the lobby, looking disoriented. "Lost?" I asked. "Trying to figure out where the nearest grocery store is," she admitted. "A coffee maker and I made it here. But I forgot things like, food." "There's a Whole Foods 3 blocks south," I said, "and a regular supermarket about 5 blocks north." "Perfect. Thanks." She started toward the door, then turned back. "You wouldn't happen to know which one has better ice cream, would you? It's been a two-pint kind of move." I found myself chuckling. The regular supermarket has more selection, but Whole Foods has this salted caramel that's worth the extra money. Her eyes lit up. A man who knows his ice cream. I'm impressed. Before I could stop myself, I offered, "I could show you around the neighborhood if you want. It can be disorienting at first." The words hung between us, more personal than I'd intended. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. "I'd like that," she said instead. "Give me 20 minutes to grab my purse." That afternoon turned into an impromptu tour of the neighborhood, the best coffee shop, not the chain on the corner, but the small place tucked behind the bookstore, the park with the duck pond, the Thai restaurant that didn't look like much, but had the best pad Thai in the city. As we walked, Diane shared snippets of her story. 25 years of marriage to her college sweetheart, who'd decided at 52 that what he really wanted was to move to Florida with his 30-year-old yoga instructor, a daughter, Megan, who was in her junior year at UCLA and trying to be supportive. From a distance, teaching career put on hold while she followed her husband's job opportunities across 3 states. "So here I am," she concluded, as we sat on a park bench, watching the ducks. 50 years old and starting from scratch. It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "That takes courage," I said, surprising myself with the admiration in my voice. She shrugged. "Or desperation. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." Relapsed into comfortable silence, watching a mother duck lead her ducklings across the pond. Finally, Diane spoke again. "What about you? How did you end up as the building super?" I hesitated. My story wasn't one I shared often, but something about Diane's openness made me want to reciprocate. "I used to be an architect," I said. "Had my own small firm with a partner. Then 2008 happened, and suddenly no one was building anything. We held on as long as we could, but eventually had to close shop. Around the same time, my wife decided she didn't sign up to be married to a failure." Diane's eyes flashed with indignation. "Oh, that's harsh." In retrospect, the marriage was already crumbling. The financial stress just accelerated the inevitable. I gestured vaguely at our surroundings. "I needed a job, and the previous super was retiring. It came with the apartment, so it solved 2 problems at once." "Do you miss it? Architecture?" The question caught me off guard. Most people just nodded sympathetically and changed the subject. "Every day," I admitted. "But there's something satisfying about fixing things, about making something broken. Work again." Diane smiled softly, but still creating in a way. Over the next few days, our paths crossed with increasing frequency. Sometimes by coincidence, running into each other in the laundry room or the lobby. Sometimes by design, Diane knocking on my door with questions about where to find the best bakery or how to adjust the temperamental radiator in her bedroom. Each time, I found myself looking forward to our next encounter. There was something refreshing about Diane's approach to life. Despite everything she'd lost, she faced each day with a determination that bordered on defiance. She was rebuilding her life piece by piece, and somehow I was becoming part of that reconstruction. A week after she moved in, Diane texted me. We'd exchanged numbers in case of emergencies, asking if I could help her assemble some furniture that had been delivered. It wasn't strictly part of my job, but I found myself agreeing without hesitation. Which brings me back to that rainy Tuesday, standing in her half-furnished apartment with an Allen wrench in my hand, trying to process her question. Would you be part of my story? I'm not sure what that means, I said honestly. Diane sat on the floor beside a pile of wooden boards that would eventually become a coffee table. It means I like you, Thomas. I think you like me too. And at my age, I don't have time to play games or pretend I'm not interested when I am. My heart hammered against my ribs. Diane, you're just getting settled, starting a new job, a new life. Are you sure you want to complicate things? She laughed, a warm sound that filled the room. Oh, Thomas, life is complicated. It is what makes it interesting. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Diane frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. She opened the door to reveal a young woman with auburn hair and tired eyes. Surprise, Mom, the woman said, dropping a duffel bag at her feet. I decided to take you up on that offer to visit Megan. Diane's voice was a mixture of joy and confusion. What are you doing here? I thought you had finals. Long story, Megan said, her eyes sliding past her mother to land on me. Her expression cooled noticeably. Who's this? Is this Thomas, the building superintendent? He's been helping me get settled. Diane's voice was carefully neutral. Thomas, this is my daughter, Megan. I nodded awkwardly. Nice to meet you. I should probably get going. Let you two catch up. No need to rush off on my account, Megan said, though her tone suggested the opposite. I actually have a leaky faucet to fix and to see, I lied, gathering my tools. But it was nice meeting you, Megan. As I headed for the door, Diane caught my eye. Rain check on that coffee table? She asked quietly. I nodded, aware of Megan's scrutiny. Just text me when you're ready. Back in my apartment, I tried to process what had just happened. Was I really considering starting something with a woman who had just moved to town, was clearly still navigating the aftermath of her divorce, and whose daughter already seemed to dislike me on principle? Yes, I realized. I was. The next morning, I ran into Diane in the lobby. She looked tired but smiled when she saw me. Megan's visit was a surprise, I asked. She nodded. She and her boyfriend broke up, and she needed a change of scenery. Talking about taking a semester off, which has me worried. That's tough, I said, not knowing what else to offer. She'll be okay. She's stronger than she thinks. Diane's eyes met mine. About yesterday, before Megan arrived, I felt my cheeks warm. You don't have to talk about that if you don't want to. I meant what I said, she replied steadily, but I understand if the timing is off. Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened, and Mrs. Patel from 4A stepped out with her yappy little dog. The moment was broken. I should get to school, Diane said. First day with the new students. Good luck, I offered, watching her go. The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine maintenance tasks. I fixed Mrs. Patel's garbage disposal clogged with chicken bones. Despite my repeated warnings, replaced a light fixture in the hallway and unclogged a shower drain in to be college. Students who apparently had never heard of a hair trap. Around 6, my phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Survived day 1. Students seem good, colleagues welcoming. Megan's out with old high school friend. Any chance you're free to finish that coffee table? I texted back. On my way? Bringing tools and takeout? Preferences? Her reply came quickly. Surprised me. But if there's pad thai involved, I wouldn't complain. 20 minutes later, I was knocking on her door with a bag of Thai food in my toolbox. Diane opened it, looking more relaxed than she had that morning. She'd changed from her teaching clothes into jeans and a soft-looking sweater, and her hair was pulled up in a messy bun. You're a lifesaver, she said, taking the food bag. I was contemplating whether cereal was an acceptable dinner. Someone who has eaten cereal for dinner more times than I care to admit. I can confirm it is acceptable, but not optimal, I replied, setting down my toolbox. We ate first, sitting cross-legged on the floor because the dining table was still in pieces. Diane told me about her first day, the nervous energy of standing in front of a classroom again. supportive department head, the student who had already challenged her book selection. "It feels good, though," she said, twirling noodles around. Her fork, like I'm finally doing something for me, not just because it fits into someone else's life plan. After dinner, we tackled the furniture assembly. I showed Diane how to read the cryptic IKEA instructions, and we fell into a rhythm, her holding pieces in place while I secured them, me sorting screws while she double-checked the diagrams. She said as we flipped the completed coffee table right side up. "This is kind of a metaphor for what I'm doing with my life. Taking all these disparate pieces and trying to assemble them into something functional and hopefully beautiful." I smiled at the thought. "Just with fewer Allen wrenches, I hope, and hopefully better instructions," she added with a laugh. We moved on to a bookshelf next, working side by side in comfortable collaboration. As we fitted the last shelf into place, Diane turned to me. "I meant what I said yesterday, Thomas, about wanting you to be part of my story." I set down the screwdriver, giving her my full attention. "I know you did. And I'm flattered, Diane. I really am. But you're worried about the timing," she finished for me. "Among other things," I admitted. "You're just getting settled here. Your daughter's going through something. I haven't exactly been putting myself out there since my divorce." Diane nodded thoughtfully. "All valid points. But here's my perspective. I'm 50 years old. I spent half my life living according to someone else's script. Now I'm writing my own, and I don't want to waste time on what-ifs and maybes. When I meet someone who makes me smile, who makes me feel like myself, I don't want to let convention or timing dictate what happens next." Her honesty was disarming.
What exactly are you proposing?"
"Nothing dramatic," she said with a small smile. "Just, let's see where this goes. No pressure, no grand commitments. Just two adults who enjoy each other's company, seeing if there might be something more." Put that way, it seemed so simple, yet I knew from experience that human connections were rarely uncomplicated. "What about Megan?" I asked. "She didn't seem thrilled to find me here yesterday." Diane sighed. "Megan is protective. Her father's departure was abrupt and painful. She's worried I'm vulnerable, making impulsive decisions." "Are you impulsive, maybe?" she conceded. "Not vulnerable in the way she thinks. I'm stronger now than I've been in years. Starting over has been terrifying, but it's also been liberating." I believed her. In the short time I'd known Diane, I'd seen a resilience that was both impressive and attractive. She wasn't running from her past. She was deliberately choosing her future. "Okay," I said finally. "Okay," she raised an eyebrow. "Okay, I'd like to be part of your story, if you'll be part of mine." Her smile was like sunrise. "I can work with that." Just then, we heard a key in the lock. Megan's voice called out, "Mom? You home?" She appeared in the doorway, her expression clouding when she saw me. "Oh, you're here again." "Thomas was helping me assemble furniture," Diane explained, getting to her feet. "How was your night out?" "Fine," Megan said shortly. "Weird seeing people from high school. Everyone's changed, but also exactly the same." Her eyes landed on the takeout containers. "You guys had dinner?" I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, the building super having dinner with her newly single mother. The two of them alone in her apartment. "I brought Thai food," I said, trying to sound casual. "Your mom mentioned it was a favorite." "How thoughtful," Megan replied, her tone making it clear she found it anything but. "Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? Privately?" Diane's eyes met mine apologetically. "Of course, honey. Thomas, would you mind?" "I should get going anyway," I said, gathering my tools. "The bookshelf looks great. Text me if you need help with anything else." As I left, I could hear Megan's voice, low and urgent. "Mom, what are you doing? You barely know him." I closed the door behind me, wondering if I'd just made a terrible mistake or taken the first step toward something wonderful. The next few days were a dance of avoidance and connection. Megan seemed to have appointed herself her mother's guardian, accompanying Diane whenever she left the apartment. Our interactions were limited to brief encounters in the lobby or hallway, always under Megan's watchful eye. But there were texts, Diane sharing funny stories from her classroom, asking my advice about the best local hardware store, sending pictures of the completed furniture arrangements. I found myself looking forward to each message, crafting my responses with more care than I'd like to admit. A week after our interrupted dinner, Diane texted, "Megan's going back to UCLA tomorrow. Crisis averted, at least for now. Dinner at my place tomorrow night. I'll cook this time," replied. "Looking forward to it. Can I bring anything?" Response: "Just yourself. And maybe some of that salted caramel ice cream." The next evening, I stood outside her door, ice cream in one hand, a small potted plant in the other, not flowers, which seemed too formal, but a hardy little succulent. That reminded me of Diane herself. Resilient, thriving in new environments. Diane opened the door, and the smell of something delicious wafted out. "Right on time," she said, smiling. She was wearing a simple dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful. "For you," I said, holding out the plant. "Housewarming gift. Better late than never." "It's perfect," she said, taking it. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." Her apartment had transformed in the weeks since she moved in. The furniture was all assembled now, arranged to create cozy conversation areas. Bookshelves lined one wall, already half filled with colorful spines. Framed photos and artwork gave the space personality. It felt like a home. "This looks amazing," I said, looking around. "You've done wonders with the place." "It's amazing what a difference some furniture makes," she replied. "Though I think I'll always associate that bookshelf with our conversation about being part of each other's stories." The directness of her reference made me smile. That was Diane Games. No pretense. Sat down to dinner, delicious. Pasta dish that Diane claimed was one of the few things she could cook. Wellen talked easily about our days. I told her about the building's quirky heating system that I was constantly tinkering with. She shared anecdotes about her students' creative interpretations of The Great Gatsby. After dinner, we moved to the couch with bowls of ice cream. Sitting beside her, I was acutely aware of her presence, the light floral scent of her perfume. The way she tucked her feet underneath her, the soft sound of her laughter. "So," she said, setting down her empty bowl, "Megan's gone back to school. I have functioning furniture. My job is going well. I think I'm officially settled in." "That mean you don't need the building super's help anymore?" I asked lightly. Diane turned to face me, her expression serious despite her smile. "I never needed the building super's help, Thomas. I wanted your company. There's a difference." I set down my own bowl, gathering my courage. "In that case, I have a question for you." "Oh, would you like to go on a proper date with me? Not assembling furniture or showing you around the neighborhood or any other pretense. Just dinner, maybe a movie, a real date." Her smile widened. "I thought you'd never ask." I reached for her hand, intertwining our fingers. "I'm a little out of practice with all this." "That makes two of us," she said, squeezing my hand. "But I think that's what makes it interesting. We're both starting over in our own ways." As I looked at her, this brave, forthright woman who had uprooted her entire life to start fresh at 50, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Possibility. I was helping her move in when she said, "I'm 50 and starting over. Would you be part of my story?" The question had seemed presumptuous, even absurd, when she first asked it. Now, sitting beside her in her newly assembled life, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Yes," I said, answering the question she'd asked weeks ago. "I'd be honored to be part of your story, Diane Crawford." She leaned forward, closing the distance between us. "In that case, Thomas Reed, I think this is where our chapter begins." And as her lips met mine, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most extraordinary stories. Our first official date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. It's the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. Nothing fancy, but authentic like us. Diane wore a dark blue dress that made her eyes shine, and I actually ironed a shirt for the occasion, which my neighbor Marcus found hilarious. "Look at you," he teased when he caught me leaving my apartment. "The building supers got a hot date." Marcus lived in 2A and had appointed himself my unofficial life coach since moving in 3 years ago. At 38, he was a freelance graphic designer with an uncanny ability to read people and absolutely no filter. "What's just dinner?" I muttered, adjusting my collar. "With the new tenant in 3B, he said, wiggling his eyebrows. "The one you've been helping with maintenance issues all week." "She needed furniture assembled," I protested. Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Thomas, my friend, I've lived here 3 years, and you've never once offered to assemble my furniture." "You've never asked," I pointed out. "Because I know that's not your job," he countered. "Face it, you like this woman." I couldn't deny it, so I just shrugged. "She's interesting." "Interesting," Marcus repeated, grinning. "That's a start. Don't screw it up by being all." He gestured vaguely at me. "You." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," I said. Dryly, his expression softened. "Seriously, though, it's good to see you putting yourself out there. About damn time." With those encouraging words ringing in my ears, I headed to Diane's apartment. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting. "You look nice," she said, her eyes taking me in. "So do you," I replied, suddenly feeling like a teenager again. "Ready to go?" The restaurant was busy but not crowded, the ambient noise providing a comfortable backdrop for conversation. We ordered wine and fell into easy discussion about our weeks. Diane told me about the progress she was making with her more reluctant students. I shared stories about the building's eccentric residents. "So this Marcus," she said, sipping her wine, "he's appointed himself your dating coach." I groaned. "He means well. He's just enthusiastic about other people's business." "I like that you have friends in the building," Diane said. "It's not just a job for you." "It wasn't supposed to be," I admitted. "When I took the position, I thought it would be temporary, something to pay the bills until I figured out my next move. And yet 5 years later," I shrugged. "Life has a way of solidifying around you when you're not paying attention." Diane nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what happened to me. One day, I woke up and realized I'd been sleepwalking through my own life for years." "What woke you?" "Up?" I asked. A shadow crossed her face. "Finding text messages on my husband's phone." Such a cliche, right? "After 25 years of marriage, that's how I discovered he'd been having an affair with his yoga instructor for months." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. She waved away my sympathy. "Don't be." In a weird way, it was the wake-up call I needed. After the initial shock and pain, I realized I'd been unhappy for years. We both had. Neither of us had the courage to admit it. Still, leaving everything behind that takes guts. "Or insanity," she said with a small smile. "The jury's still out on which one it was." The waiter arrived with our food, momentarily pausing the conversation. When he left, Diane leaned forward. "What about you? You said your wife left when? Your business failed?" I twirled pasta around my fork, considering how to answer. That was the catalyst, but not the whole story. "We married young, both 23, fresh out of college. I was going to be a famous architect. She was going to be a journalist. We had it all planned out. And then life happened," Diane suggested. Exactly, my career took off faster than hers. She ended up in corporate communications instead of investigative journalism. Resentment built. When the firm failed, it was just the final straw. "Do you ever hear from her?" I shook my head. "She remarried about a year after our divorce. Lives in Seattle now, I think. We don't keep in touch." "No kids?" "No," I said, the familiar pang hitting me. "We kept putting it off, waiting for the right time, the right financial situation, the right everything. Then suddenly we were in our late 30s and barely speaking to each other." Diane reached across the table and touched my hand. "I'm sorry." "It's ancient history now," I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Some wounds heal but still leave scars. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: favorite books, travel dreams, merits of dogs versus cats. She was firmly team dog, while I maintained a diplomatic neutrality. By the time we finished dessert, a tiramisu we shared, our forks occasionally battling for the same bite, it felt like we'd known each other for years rather than weeks. Walking back to the apartment building, Diane slipped her hand into mine. "I had a wonderful time," she said. "Me too," I replied, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. At her door, there was that moment of uncertainty that comes at the end of every first date, regardless of age. Do I kiss her? Just say goodnight? Will it be awkward if Diane solved the dilemma by rising on her tiptoes and pressing her lips? To mine, a brief, sweet kiss that held the promise of more. "Good night, Thomas," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I'll see you tomorrow." As I walked back to my apartment, I couldn't wipe the smile from my face. For the first time in years, I felt the fluttering of possibility in my chest. My good mood lasted until I reached my door and found a note taped to it. "Roof leak in 4C. Mrs. Chen called twice. Sorry, man. Marcus's reality check." I was still the building super, and a leaky roof waited for no man's romantic awakening. With a sigh, I changed clothes and headed upstairs to assess the damage. The universe's timing might be inconvenient, but at least it had a sense of humor. The next morning, Saturday, I was fixing the roof leak when my phone buzzed with a text. "From Diane, coffee at Redwood Cafe at 11? My treat, since you're probably up to your elbows in roof repairs." I smiled. News traveled fast in this building. I texted back, "How did you know about the leak?" Her reply came quickly. "Mrs. Chen told me when I borrowed her broom this morning. She thinks you're a hero, by the way. Showed up at 10 p.m. to save her antique rug from certain destruction. I finished the temporary patch job the roofers would need to come for a proper fix next week and headed home to shower and change. By 10:45, I was walking toward the cafe, joined the crisp autumn air and the unusual sensation of anticipation. Redwood Cafe was a local institution, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. Inside, the aroma of freshly ground coffee and baked goods created an irresistible welcome. Diane was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming mugs. "I took a chance and ordered for you," she said as I sat down. "Black coffee, no sugar, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "How did you know?" Mentioned it when we were assembling the bookshelf. Something about coffee being pure and uncomplicated, unlike people. I said that out loud. I asked, embarrassed. She laughed. "You did. It was very philosophical for a man wielding an Allen wrench." I took a sip of the coffee. Perfect. Well, I stand by it. Coffee should be coffee, not a dessert masquerading as a morning beverage, says the man who ate half a tiramisu last night, she teased. That's different. Our banter was interrupted by a booming voice. Thomas Reed, as I live and breathe. And with a lovely lady, no less. I looked up to see Frank Delacourt, my former business partner, bearing down on our table. Frank was 52, with a salt and pepper beard and the energy of a man half his age. After our architecture firm folded, he'd reinvented himself as a real estate developer, smaller projects, but successful enough. "Frank," I said, standing to shake his hand. "Good to see you." "Likewise." Frank's gaze shifted to Diane. "And who might this be?" I made the introductions, watching as Frank turned on his considerable charm. That was always his role in our partnership. I designed the buildings. He charmed the clients. "An English teacher? How wonderful!" Frank exclaimed. "We need more. Educators shaping young minds." My mother was a teacher, 40 years in the classroom. Diane smiled politely. "It's a challenging profession, but rewarding." "Thomas here was always teaching me things," Frank continued. "Brilliant architect, one of the best. Such a shame about the firm." I shifted uncomfortably. Frank meant well, but I didn't need the reminder of my former career, especially not. Now, sensing my discomfort, Diane smoothly changed the subject. "Frank, how do you take your coffee? Let me guess, something complicated with extra shots." Frank laughed heartily. "Triple espresso with a splash of heavy cream." Life's too short for moderation. They chatted for a few minutes about Portland's best coffee shops before Frank glanced at his watch. I should get going. Meeting a client about a potential project. He turned to me. "Thomas, we should catch up properly sometime. I've got some ideas you might be interested in." After he left, Diane studied me over the rim of her mug. "Former business partner?" I nodded. "Frank's a good guy. Landed on his feet after the firm collapsed. And you didn't?" Gently, I stared into my coffee. "I landed differently. He thinks highly of you." "Called you brilliant." Frank exaggerates. It's his superpower. Diane set down her mug. Or maybe you underestimate yourself. It's yours. Before I could respond, the cafe door opened, and a whirlwind in the form of a petite woman with short, gray hair burst in. She spotted Diane and made a beeline for our table. "Diane Crawford, I knew it was you," she exclaimed, pulling Diane into a hug. Diane looked shocked but pleased. "Elaine, what are you doing in Portland? Conference on Educational Technology." "Just got in yesterday." Elaine turned her keen gaze on me. "Was this handsome fellow?" "This is Thomas," Diane said. "Thomas. This is Elaine Baker, my former colleague and dear friend from Nashville." Elaine gave me an appraising look. Well, well. You didn't waste any time, did you, Dee?" Diane's cheeks flushed. "Thomas is the superintendent in my building. He's been helping me get settled." "I bet he has," Elaine said with a wink that made me choke on my coffee. "Elaine," Diane warned. But she was smiling. "Oh, relax. I'm just teasing." Elaine pulled up a chair without waiting for an invitation. "So, Thomas, what's your story? How did you end up helping my friend get settled?" For the next hour, our quiet coffee date turned into an impromptu reunion as Elaine extracted my life story with the skill of a seasoned interrogator. By the time she left, trushing off to her conference with promises to call Diane Latorre, felt like I'd been through a friendly but thorough background check. "I apologize for Hurricane Elaine," Diane said, as we watched her friend dash across the street. "She's been telling me to get back out there since the divorce papers were signed." "She cares about you," I observed. "She does sometimes, too." "Much," Diane smiled ruefully. When James left, my friends divided into two camps, the Take Your Time to Heal group and the Best Revenge is Living Well group. Elaine firmly belongs to the latter. "Which approach did you take?" She considered the question. "Neither, I think. Or maybe both." I didn't start dating right away, but I also didn't hide in my house crying for a year. I focused on figuring out who I was without him, what I wanted my life to look like. And that led you to Portland. Eventually, I applied for teaching positions all over the country. When the Portland offer came through, it felt right. Far enough from Nashville to be a clean break, but not so exotic that I'd feel completely untethered. "Do you miss it, Nashville?" Diane gazed out the window, her expression thoughtful. "I miss certain things. My favorite bookstore. The way the air smells in spring. My friends, like Elaine." But Nashville had become synonymous with my marriage, with James. Every street corner held a memory. I needed new corners, new memories. "And are you making them? New memories?" Her eyes returned to mine, warm and direct. "I'm working on it." This is a good start. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of normal activities that somehow felt extraordinary because they involved Diane. We explored the Saturday market, where she bought handmade pottery, and I discovered she had a weakness for artisanal cheese. We walked through the Japanese garden, talking about everything and nothing. Sunday morning, we ran into each other in the laundry room and ended up folding clothes together. Laughing about our respective laundry habits, she separated colors meticulously. I tended toward the everything in cold water approach. By Monday morning, when we both left for worksheet or high school, me to fix a broken garbage disposal in 5B, it felt like we'd known each other for years rather than weeks. There was an ease between us, a comfort that I hadn't experienced with anyone in a long time. That evening, I received a text from Marcus. "Emergency tenant meeting in the community room at 7. Building manager's orders." I frowned. Hank Peterson. The building manager who represented the property owners rarely called meetings unless something was wrong. Usually, he left the day-to-day operations to me and only showed up for quarterly inspections. I texted Diane, "Tenant meeting tonight at 7. Want to walk down together?" Her reply, "Sure, everything okay?" I responded, "Not sure. Probably just a maintenance announcement." At 6:55, I knocked on Diane's door. She looked concerned as she joined me in the hallway. "Any idea what this is about?" she asked as we walked toward the elevator. "Could be anything," I said. Last time it was about someone leaving bicycle parts in the hallway. The time before that, they were announcing renovations to the lobby. The community room was already half full when we arrived. I nodded to familiar faces, Mrs. Chen from 4C, whose roof I'd fixed. The college students from DB looking bored. Marcus, who gave me a knowing smile when he saw Diane and me enter together. At precisely 7 o'clock, Hank Peterson strode to the front of the room. In his mid-60s with a perpetual scowl, Hank had been managing properties for over 30 years and had seen it all. "Thank you all for coming," he began without preamble. "I'll keep this brief. No. The owners have decided to convert this building to condominiums." A murmur ran through the room. Hank held up his hand for silence. "Each of you will be given the opportunity to purchase your unit at a competitive price. Those who choose not to buy will have 6 months to find new accommodations. Details will be sent to each apartment tomorrow." The room erupted in questions. Would rent increase during the 6 months? What would the purchase prices be? What about tenant rights? Hank answered mechanically, clearly having dealt with similar situations before. His prices would be competitive. No, rent would not increase. Yes, all legal requirements would be met. I sat in stunned silence. The apartment had been more than just a job. Per kit had been my home for 5 years. And now, unless I could somehow afford to buy it, unlikely on a building superintendent's salary, I would need to find somewhere else to live. Beside me, Diane looked equally shocked. She'd just moved in, just started building her new life here. As the meeting dispersed, tenants clustered in worried groups, discussing options and expressing outrage. Diane touched my arm. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Not really. You in shock, I think?" I just unpacked all my boxes. Marcus joined us, his usual cheer dampened. "Well, this sucks. Any chance you know what they're asking for the units, Thomas?" "No idea," I said. "Duh. Hank doesn't share that kind of information with me." "What will you do?" Diane asked. "About your job, I mean?" I hadn't even thought that far ahead. I don't know. Look for another superintendent position, I guess. Or Marcus prompted. I didn't finish the sentence. The ore had been floating in the back of my mind. 4 years returned to architecture somehow, rebuild that part of my life. But it had always seemed like a distant dream, not a real possibility. "Let's get out of here," Diane suggested, sensing my discomfort. "My apartment. But I have wine." Back in her place, Diane poured generous glasses of red wine, while Marcus sprawled on her couch, scrolling through property listings on his phone. "Market's tight," he reported grimly. "Not impossible, but tight." I leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to process what had happened. I can't believe they didn't give me any warning. I've been working for them for 5 years. "Corporate real estate," Marcus said bitterly. "It's never personal, just business." "It feels pretty personal when it's your home," Diane pointed out, handing me a glass of wine. "And your job?" I added. 8. We sat in gloomy silence for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Marcus sat up straight. "Okay, enough doom and gloom. We have 6 months. That's plenty of time to figure something out." "It's easy for you to say," I replied. "You work from home. You can live anywhere." "True," he conceded. "But maybe this is an opportunity in disguise. When's the last time you did anything that scared you, Thomas?" I glanced at Diane, who was watching me with thoughtful eyes. "Recently, actually." Marcus followed my gaze and grinned. "Fair point. But professionally? When's the last time you took a risk there?" 5 years ago, when my firm collapsed," I said dryly. "That wasn't a risk. That was a disaster," Marcus corrected. "I'm talking about a deliberate choice to step outside your comfort zone." I didn't have an answer for that. "Think about it," Marcus continued, warming to his theme. "You're a trained architect who's been fixing leaky faucets for 5 years. Maybe the universe is giving you a kick in the pants." "The universe could have been more subtle," I muttered. Diane, who had been quiet, spoke up. "He's not entirely wrong, Thomas. Sometimes we need external forces to push us past our inertia. Lord knows I wouldn't have left Nashville if James hadn't blown up my life." "And look at you now," Marcus said, gesturing around the apartment. "New city, new job, new beginnings, and a handsome super to help assemble your IKEA furniture." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. I'm not sure I'm ready to thank the universe for this particular intervention. You don't have to. Think it, Diane said, her voice gentle but firm. But maybe you can use it. We both can. There was something in her tone that made me look at her more closely. What are you thinking? She took a sip of wine before answering. I'm thinking that I'd just left everything familiar to start over. It was terrifying, but exhilarating. Maybe it's your turn? To do what? Move across the country? Not necessarily. But to reconsider what you want. What would make you happy? Marcus clapped his hands. Yes. Listen to your wise girlfriend, Thomas. She's not my... I began automatically, then stopped when I saw Diane's raised eyebrow. What was she to me? We'd had one official date, but it felt like more. Much more. Marcus, sensing the sudden tension, stood up. And that's my cue to leave. Diane, thank you for the wine and wisdom. Think about what we said. 6 months is both a long time and no time at all. He paused at the door. By the way, if you two decide to get a place together, I called dibs on being your first dinner guest. After he left, Diane and I sat in companionable silence, the weight of the evening's news settling around us. He's right, she said finally. 6 months is both forever and nothing, I sighed. I know. I just wasn't prepared for this. Are we ever prepared for the big changes? I certainly wasn't. I looked at her, this woman who had uprooted her entire life and moved across the country alone at 50, who had faced betrayal and loss but somehow maintained her warmth, her humor, her openness to new experiences. To me, how did you do it? I asked. Just start over? She considered the question, one step at a time, and with a lot of fear, honestly. There were days I thought I'd made a terrible mistake, that I should just go back to what was familiar, even if it wasn't perfect. She smiled softly. But then I reminded myself that familiar isn't the same as right, and that sometimes the scariest choices lead to the best outcomes. Like asking a stranger to be part of your story, I suggested. Her smile widened. Exactly. Like that, I reached for her hand, intertwining our fingers. I'm glad you did. So am I, she said, squeezing my hand. And for what it's worth, I think you'd make an amazing architect again, if that's what you want. I don't know what I want, I admitted. I've been on autopilot for so long, and maybe this is your chance to figure it out, she suggested. No pressure, but 6 months is a good timeline for some soul-searching. As I looked at her, this brave, insightful woman who had crashed into my carefully constructed routine and turned it upside down, I realized that the building conversion wasn't the only seismic shift in my life. Diane Crawford, with her direct gaze and her question about being part of her story, had already changed everything. Soul-searching, I repeated. I'm a little out of practice. That's okay, she said, her eyes warm. I've become something of an expert lately. I'm happy to share my wisdom. And sitting there in her newly assembled living room, facing an uncertain future that somehow felt full of possibility, I realized that Diane's arrival in my life wasn't just a coincidence. It was, as Marcus might say, the universe giving me exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. Sometimes the most profound beginnings come disguised as endings. Sometimes helping someone move in leads to moving forward yourself. The following week passed in a blur of regular work duties mixed with urgent conversations about the building's conversion. Tenants stopped me in hallways, cornered me in the laundry room, and texted at all hours seeking information I didn't have. All I could do was direct them to Hank, who had become the most despised man in the building overnight. I was replacing a broken light fixture in the lobby when Frank Delacourt called. Thomas, been thinking about you since our coffee run-in. Got time for lunch today? Part of me wanted to say no. I had a list of maintenance tasks longer than my arm, not to mention my own housing crisis to figure out. But something in Frank's tone and unusual urgency made me curious. Sure, Frank. Noon at Riverside Grill? Perfect. See you then, partner. Partner gave me pause. Frank hadn't called me that since our firm dissolved. At noon, I found Frank already seated at a corner table, nursing a scotch and practically vibrating with energy. He stood too, shake my hand, then immediately launched in. Thomas, I've been thinking. What would you say to a partnership revival? I blinked. What? Delacourt and Red Architects. Like the old days, but better? Frank leaned forward, eyes gleaming. I've been doing well with development, but I miss design. Real design, not just cookie-cutter condos. No one designs like you, Thomas. Frank, I haven't drawn anything in 5 years, so it's like riding a bike. Talent's still there. He pulled out his tablet and flipped through images. Look at this. Riverfront property, zoned for mixed-use development. The owner wants something special, sustainable, community-oriented, beautiful. Your kind of project. I studied the images, a stretch of waterfront currently occupied by a dilapidated warehouse. The potential was undeniable. Even if I wanted to, which I'm not saying I do, I don't have the capital to buy back into the firm. Frank waved his hand dismissively. Details. We'd work something out. Sweat equity at first, maybe. The point is, I need your eye, your sensibility. He lowered his voice. And between us, I think you need this too. That building superintendent gig was never meant to be permanent. It's a steady job, I said defensively. So is being a toll collector, but that doesn't mean it's right for you. Frank's expression softened. Look, I know how hard the crash hit you, professionally and personally. But it's been 5 years, Thomas. Time to get back on the horse. I sipped my water, buying time to think. The idea of returning to architecture was both thrilling and terrifying. So, what if I'd lost my touch? What if I failed again? The building's converting to condos, I said finally. I'll be out of a job in 6 months anyway. Frank's eyebrows shot up. Perfect timing, then? The universe is practically shoving you in my direction. That was the second time someone had invoked the universe's intentions regarding my career. Change. Maybe I should start listening. I'll think about it, I promised. Don't think too long, Frank warned. An opportunity knocks, but it doesn't wait around forever. Back at the building, I found Diane in the lobby, collecting her mail. She smiled when she saw me, but there was a tension around her eyes. Everything. Okay? I asked. She shrugged. Parent-teacher conferences today? Always stressful, even with the best students. Want to talk about it over dinner tonight? My place this time. Her smile relaxed into something genuine. I'd like that. That evening, as I chopped vegetables for a stir-fry, I told Diane about Frank's proposal. She listened attentively, perched on a stool at my kitchen counter, a glass of wine in hand. It sounds like an amazing opportunity, she said when I finished. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It's been so long since you've designed anything. I nodded. What if I can't do it anymore? That's the fear talking, she said gently. The skills are still there, Thomas. They might be. Rusty, but they're there. Maybe. I focused on slicing peppers, avoiding her gaze. Can I ask you something personal? She said after a moment. Of course. When you look ahead 5 years, what do you see yourself doing? And don't say fixing leaky faucets. I paused, knife hovering over the cutting board. No one had asked me that question in years. I'd stopped asking it of myself, too comfortable in the routine of my current life to contemplate the future. Don't know, I admitted. I used to have such clear visions, designs I wanted to create, buildings that would make a difference. But after the firm failed, I just stopped dreaming that way. Maybe it's time to start again, she suggested. I looked at her then, this woman who had uprooted her entire life at 50 to pursue a new beginning. Who was I to be less brave? Maybe it is, I agreed. The next morning, I found myself opening a dusty portfolio case I'd stashed in the back of my closet years ago. Inside were sketches, blueprints, renderings, fragments of the career I'd once loved. I spread them across my dining table, studying the lines and curves, the play of light and space I'd once been so passionate about. Some of it was good, really good. Some showed the naivety of a younger architect, but even those had an energy, a vision that stirred something long dormant inside me. A knock at the door interrupted my reverie. I opened it to find Hank Peterson, the building manager, looking uncomfortable. Got a minute, Reed. I stepped aside to let him in, noticing. His eyes widened at the architectural drawings covering the table. What's all this, he asked. Old work, I said. For From before I was the super, Hank nodded, distracted. Right, you were an architect. Listen, I came to talk about your position, and my stomach tightened. What about it? The owners appreciate your service, but with the conversion, he trailed off, then squared his shoulders. They'll need you through the transition, but the superintendent position will be eliminated once the building goes condo. Even though I'd suspected as much, the confirmation stung. I see. There's a severance package, Hank continued. Not meeting my eyes? And a reference letter, of course? You've been excellent, Red? Never had a complaint? Thanks, I said mechanically. Hank's gaze drifted back to the drawings. You going back to architecture? Thinking about it? He nodded. Good. Seems a waste. Someone with your training fixing toilets. He headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I fought to keep you on. Told them a condo building. Still needs maintenance. I appreciate that. After he left, I stood looking at the drawings scattered across the table. Perhaps this was the final push I needed. Not just an opportunity appearing, but the safety net disappearing. I texted Frank, let's talk details. When are you free? His response came immediately. Anytime. My office. 2 p.m. today. Confirmed. And then texted Diane, just got official notice about my job. Also meeting Frank this afternoon to discuss partnership. Dinner tonight to celebrate, commiserate. Her reply, absolutely. Good luck with Frank. Remember who you are and what you're worth. That simple message steadied me. Remember who you are. It's not just the building super, but Thomas Reed, architect, creator, designer. Frank's office was in a sleek, downtown building with floor-tooth ceiling windows overlooking the river. The reception area displayed models of his recent projects, mostly residential developments, tasteful if somewhat safe in their design. Thomas. Frank emerged from his office, arms wide. Come in, Sarah. Hold my calls, he ushered me into a conference room where drawings and maps covered a large table. I've been brainstorming all morning. The next 2 hours, we talked through the riverfront project, the vision, the constraints, the opportunities. Frank had already secured preliminary approval from the city for a mixed-use development, contingent on final design approval. They want something iconic, he explained. Something that honors the riverfront's history, but looks to the future. Your specialty. As he talked, I found myself sketching on a notepad, rough forms emerging, responding to the site's unique challenges. Frank watched, a smile spreading across his face. There he is, he said softly. The Thomas Reed I remember. By the time we finished, we had the outline of a partnership agreement. I would work part-time at first, focusing on the riverfront project while maintaining my superintendent duties. If the project went well, we'd formalize the partnership. No pressure, Frank said as we shook hands. But I have a good feeling about this, Thomas. It's your second act. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in years. There was fear, yes, but also excitement, a creative energy I'd almost forgotten. When I returned to the building, I found a note taped to my door, pipe burst in 5A, called Emergency Plumber, Marcus. Below it, another note in different handwriting. Meet me on the roof when you get back. D. The roof access was technically off limits to tenants, but as super, I had the key. I'd shown Diane the spectacular view during one of our early conversations. I grabbed a bottle of wine and 2 glasses from my apartment, then headed upstairs. I found her sitting on one of the weathered wooden benches that maintenance staff occasionally use for breaks. The late afternoon sun bathed the rooftop in golden light. The city spread out below us like a living map. Quite the office view, I said, sitting beside her. She smiled. Perks of knowing the super. She nodded at the wine. Celebrating or commiserating? Both, I think. I poured 2 glasses and handed her one. Frank offered me a partnership, starting part-time while I finish my duties here. Thomas, that's wonderful. She clinked her glass against mine. 2 new beginnings. New beginnings, I echoed, taking a sip. It's terrifying. All the best things are at first. She gazed out at the cityscape. When I first decided to leave Nashville, I had panic attacks for a week. Kept thinking I was making a huge mistake, that I should just stay in my comfortable, familiar misery. What changed your mind? Megan, actually. She said something that stuck with me. Mom, you always taught me to be brave, but I've never actually seen you take a risk. It hit hard because it was true. I'd played it safe my whole adult life. I nodded, understanding completely. It's easier to give advice than to take it. Exactly. So here I am, taking my own advice finally. And here you are, doing the same. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. The city transformed in the changing light, buildings glowing amber and gold. Frank called it my second act, I said after a while. Diane considered this. I like that. Second act. Not starting over exactly, but continuing the story in a new direction. Is that how you see it? Your move here? I'm trying to. Some days it feels more like being pushed off a cliff and learning to fly on the way down. She laughed softly. But yes, second act is a much more empowering way to frame it. I reached for her hand, intertwining our fingers. Thank you for what? For crashing into my carefully constructed routine, for asking me to be part of your story. I think I needed that more than I realized. She squeezed my hand. Mutual, Thomas. Very mutual. As the sky deepened to indigo, city lights twinkling. Below us, I felt a certainty I hadn't experienced in years. Whatever came next, success or failure, triumph or challenge, wouldn't be facing it alone. And somehow that made all the difference. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Mornings were devoted to my superintendent duties, afternoons to working with Frank on the riverfront project. Evenings belonged to Diane's sometimes quiet dinners in one of our apartments, sometimes exploring Portland's neighborhoods, discovering the city together. One rainy Sunday, we were curled up on my couch watching an old movie when Diane's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Megan, she said. I should take this. I paused the movie as she answered. From her side of the conversation, I gathered that something significant had happened. Slow down, honey, she said. What do you mean you're not going back? For the whole year? Have you thought this through? Yes, of course you can stay with me, but... When she hung up, her expression was troubled. Everything okay? I asked. Megan's taking a leave of absence from UCLA. Says she needs time to figure things out. She wants to come stay with me for a while. Undefined. And you're concerned? Diane sighed. I want to support her, but I worry this is a reaction to her breakup rather than a thought-out decision. And selfishly, she hesitated. Selfishly, I prompted. I've just started building my new life here. My own space, my job, you. She looked at me apologetically. Is it terrible that part of me wants to keep this time for myself? It's not terrible at all, I assured her. It's honest. When will she arrive? Right. She's driving up. Diane leaned against me. I'm sorry. This might complicate things. I kissed the top of her head. Life is complicated. We'll figure it out. But privately, I shared her concern. Megan's arrival during her previous visit had created tension. She clearly saw me as a potential threat to her newly single mother. Her protective instincts were understandable, if uncomfortable. On Friday afternoon, I was helping Mrs. Chen with a stubborn window when I saw a car pull into the building's parking lot. A young woman with auburn hair, unmistakably Diane's daughter, emerged, stretching after the long drive. She popped the trunk and began unloading what appeared to be considerably more luggage than a short visit would require. I finished with Mrs. Chen's window and headed downstairs, debating whether to introduce myself or give Megan and Diane privacy for their reunion. The decision was made for me when I encountered them in the lobby, Diane struggling with a large suitcase while Megan carried a duffel bag and backpack. Let me help with that, I offered, reaching for the suitcase. Diane smiled gratefully, but Megan's expression was guarded. You must be Thomas, she said, eyes assessing me critically. Mom's mentioned you. All good things, I hope, I replied, aiming for lightness. Mostly that you're handy with an Allen wrench, she said, not quite smiling. We rode the elevator. In awkward silence, at Diane's apartment, I set down the suitcase and prepared to make a graceful exit. Thanks for the help, Diane said, her eyes communicating more than her words. Will I see you later? Before I could answer, Megan interrupted. Actually, Mom, I was hoping we could have dinner, just the two of us. Catch up, of course. Diane agreed quickly. Thomas, rain check? Absolutely, I said, understanding the dynamics at play. Nice to meet you properly, Megan. Welcome to Portland. As I left, I heard Megan's voice, pitched low, but not quite. Quiet enough? So that's the super you've been seeing? Isn't he a little, stuck? I didn't hear Diane's response, but the question lingered as I returned to my apartment. Was that how Megan saw me? How others saw me? The building super, who had settled for less than he was capable of. Frank's words echoed in my mind. That superintendent gig was never meant to be permanent. Maybe they were right. Been stuck, comfortable in a routine that demanded little and risked nothing. Until Diane arrived and asked that disarming question, would you be part of my story? The next morning, I was in my apartment working on sketches for the riverfront project when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Megan looking slightly uncomfortable. Hi, she said. Mom's at a department meeting. I thought maybe we could talk. Surprised, I stepped aside to let her in. Sure. Coffee? Please. As I prepared the cups, Megan wandered around my apartment, stopping to examine the architectural drawings spread across the dining table. These are good, she said, sounding genuinely impressed. Mom mentioned you were an architect, but I didn't realize that I actually had talent, one suggested with a wry smile. She had the grace to look embarrassed. Sorry about yesterday. I was tired from the drive, and she trailed off, accepting the coffee I offered. Mom seems different here. Happier. I think she is, I said cautiously. She's brave, your mom. Starting over in a new city at 50 isn't easy. Megan nodded, sipping her coffee. I know. It's partly why I'm here, actually. I wanted to see this new life she's building. Make sure she's okay. And is she okay? Better than okay, I think. Megan's eyes were surprisingly perceptive for someone so young. She talks about you a lot. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Look, Megan continued, I'm not here to cause problems. After what happened with my dad, I worry about her. She acts tough, but she was really hurt. I know, I said. She's told me about it. As she told you, she cried every night for a month, that she lost 15 pounds because she couldn't eat, that she had to go on anxiety medication. I shook my head, my heart aching for what Diane had endured. She's stronger now, Megan continued, but I don't want to see her hurt again. Neither do I said simply. Megan studied me, as if trying to gauge my sincerity. Finally, she nodded. Good, because if you do hurt her, I'll have to kill you. The deadpan delivery made me laugh. Despite the awkwardness, noted. She gestured toward the drawings. So you're getting back into architecture? Trying to? It's been a while. Mom says you're talented. That you should never have stopped. I smiled, touched that Diane had discussed me with her daughter. Your mom has a lot of faith in me. She's a good judge of character, Megan said. Usually she set down her cup. Anyway, I should go. Mom wants to show me around the neighborhood. When she gets back at the door, she paused. Thomas, thanks for the coffee and for making my mom happy. After she left, I returned to my drawings with renewed energy. If Diane believed in my enough to defend my talent to her daughter, perhaps. It was time I fully believed in myself. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Megan and I are cooking dinner. Join us, I replied. Are you sure? Don't want to intrude on mother-daughter time? Her response. Megan specifically asked if you were coming. I think you two had a good talk? I smiled. We did. Be there in 20. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Megan was animated, asking questions about Portland and sharing stories from UCLA. She seemed more relaxed, less defensive. When the conversation turned to the building's conversion to condos, she looked genuinely concerned. So you'll both have to move? That's awful. It's an opportunity in disguise, Diane said, echoing Marcus's words from weeks earlier. Forces us to consider what we really want. And what do you want, Mom? Megan asked directly. Diane glanced at me before answering, still figuring that out. But I know I want to be here in Portland. I want to teach. And she paused. I want to be open to possibilities I haven't considered yet. Megan nodded thoughtfully. What about you, Thomas? Besides going back to architecture?
But
I haven't thought that far ahead, I admitted. For a long time I was just existing, doing my job, getting through each day. Now I'm trying to rediscover what I'm passionate about, like designing buildings, yes, and other things. I met Diane's eyes briefly, a silent communication passing between us. Megan observed this exchange with a slight smile. Well, for what it's worth, I think it's cool you're both reinventing yourselves. This makes me feel less weird about taking time off school to figure things out. Different stages, same challenges, Diane said, reaching for her daughter's hand. We're all just trying to find our way. After dinner, as we cleared the table together, Megan pulled me aside. You know, she said quietly, when my mom first told me she was moving to Portland, I thought she was having a midlife crisis. Now, I think she was having a midlife awakening. Now, that's a good way to put it, I agreed. She hesitated. Be patient with her, okay? She's still figuring things out. So am I assured her. We're figuring it out together. Megan's presence, which I had feared might create distance between Diane and me, actually seemed to bring us closer.
Oh.
There was something about seeing Diane as a mother patient, supportive, yet firm when needed, that added another dimension to my understanding of her, and watching Megan gradually warm to me, moving from suspicion to cautious acceptance, felt like passing an important test. One evening, about a week after Megan's arrival, the three of us were walking through a neighborhood street fair when we ran into Frank. He was with a client, but broke away to introduce himself to Diane and Megan. So you're the famous Diane, he said, shaking her hand enthusiastically. Thomas talks about you constantly. And you must be Megan, visiting from California, right? As Frank chatted animatedly with them, I observed the easy way he engaged, them drawing them into his orbit with his natural charm. That had always been his gift-making connections, putting people at ease. Thomas is making magic with this riverfront project, he told them proudly. Wait until you see the latest renderings. Pure genius. I shook my head, embarrassed by his exuberance, but Diane beamed at me. I'd love to see them, she said. Been very secretive about his work. Not secretive, I protested. It's still preliminary. Preliminary but brilliant, Frank insisted. You should be proud, partner. As we parted ways, Megan nudged me. He's quite the cheerleader. Frank has always been. Enthusiastic, I said with a smile. Must be nice, she observed, having someone believe in you that much. It is, I agreed, glancing at Diane. Makes all the difference. Later that night, after Megan had gone to bed, Diane and I sat on her balcony, watching the city lights. Frank's right, you know, she said softly. You should be proud of what you're doing. It feels good, I admitted. Designing again, creating something from nothing. Will you show me the renderings? I hesitated, then nodded. They're still rough, but yes, I'd like that. She leaned her head against my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Thomas. Taking this leap couldn't have been easy. I had a good example to follow, I said, kissing the top of her head. Someone who showed me that starting over at 50 isn't just possible, it can be the beginning of the best chapter yet. As we sat there, the future stretching before us, uncertain but full of possibility, I realized that Megan was right. What Diane had experienced wasn't a crisis, but an awakening. And perhaps, through her courage and her simple question, would you be part of my story? She had awakened something in me as well. The path forward wasn't clear. We still had decisions to make, challenges to face. The building's conversion loomed, forcing both of us to consider where and how we wanted to live. My partnership with Frank was in its early stages, promising but not yet secure. Megan's presence added another layer of complexity to our evolving relationship. But sitting there with Diane, I felt a certainty that had eluded me for years. Whatever came next, we would face it together, to people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, ready to write the next chapters of their stories side by side. Sometimes, the most profound connections begin with the simplest questions, and sometimes Helping someone move in leads to moving forward in ways you never imagined possible. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. Well, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.